Greetings, everyone. I have the stunning, lovely Shona Allen with me today, and we're going to talk about something. Oh, thank you, Shona, for coming along. I've been really looking forward to this. I was on Shona and Gary's show a few months ago, and Shona briefly brought up about when she met Madame Blavatsky. So I wanted to go deeper into that. So Shona, welcome to the show, and do tell all about how you met Madame Helena Blavatsky.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on. Absolute pleasure. And I haven't really spoken too much about the experience I had with Helena because it was kind of strange because I've had lots of things in my life. It's a journey. I believe everybody's on a journey and a journey to light. That's what I believe. And I had some strange experiences as a child. I was very much drawn to ancient Egyptian things. That was a big thing, and I still am as well. But as a child, when I was in bed, I used to pop into bed with my parents. I was only about 4, and they used to have one of these headboards with loads of books behind. But I was always drawn to the same one, and it was about Tutankhamun. So, and I used to love looking through the pictures. So I've always had a big thing about Egypt. Now, kind of moving forwards a bit, I've had quite a few experiences, but one of the things that happened was we moved into this lovely little cottage in the woods on this private estate, and I would say that I've always been a seeker after truth, but in particular, and this is quite funny. I was in the bath at the time and I saw a vision of Helena Blavatsky, and I come from, and subsequently I've had a few experiences, and they always seem to revolve around, and don't laugh, either being in the bath or on the loo. I think it must be a water thing. Being a Scorpio as well is a water sign, so whether there's any sort of connection with that, I don't know. But her first appearance was very significant for me personally because I started to receive information, so it would be words or sentences and things, and I would start going forth and trying to find out information. So it was sort of like, I don't know, a truth quest, if you like, in that they would give me something. I call it spirit. I would hear something from spirit, and they never tell you the whole thing. You have to find it out yourself. This is all part of it, because if they gave it to you on a plate, what good would it be? What would you really learn from that? Not much. So they give you like little tidbits, and I would kind of go and search for things. And through these things that I've heard and been given, I found an awful lot of truths on my path. And I find usually when they're sort of crucial things, I've seen Helena. So whilst I wouldn't say I'm in any way an expert on Helena Blavatsky, but I personally believe, and I know that there's a lot of anti-stuff about Helena and the Theosophical movement, but I have to say from a personal experience that I found some very deep resonating truths in it myself. And so I believe really that was her path. Her path was to bring enlightenment. And I believe that she's still up there working away to help people to bring enlightenment. And I think this moment, this time that we're in at the moment, I think is a very, very important and crucial time. And I do believe that there's great wisdom and enlightenment being brought to humanity at the moment.
Yeah, we're definitely on a pivot point, I think. And I think that's why people like herself, Blavatsky and Steiner and Gurdjieff and Roerich and all the others appeared in the late 1800s. Well, didn't appear, but obviously they connected with maybe the secret chiefs or the ancient masters because they knew we had to get the word out to humanity for those that had ears to hear. And obviously you were attuned to all that, and she could pass on, continue her work from above. Because I agree with you, Theosophy did have a few problems after she died and a lot of strange connotations to her work, but that's people not reading her work properly.
Yeah. And also, I think as well, I think if we were to take a look at that and other sort of esoteric groups and masonry, etc., etc., I would also suggest that perhaps some of them have been infiltrated by not so nice people as well, who don't want the truth to come out, and so they subvert it and pervert it, and they cloak it so that people actually don't realize the true meanings behind the symbolism, for example, and the truths. And I think the one thing I would say, I mean, I loved her, kind of saying, well, the theosophical saying that there is no religion higher than truth. And I would absolutely agree with that 100%, because in every single religion, I have seen the same seed of truth in each. And although a lot of them argue amongst each other, but really there's a seed of truth in all of them. And that truth, as she said, it transcends. It's like oil and water, isn't it? They kind of separate out, but there is a connecting factor into so many of the ancient religions and ancient civilizations as well, if you actually take time to investigate and research yourself.
I find it quite funny, as you do too, that she came to see you while you was on the toilet. But I wonder if that, because she was quite a brazen woman and probably saw, right, I've got Shona to myself now. But when you say it was like a vision, so can you explain a bit more about that? You don't have to tell us any of if she gave you secret messages, but like just how did
No.
they?
Well, she was just there smiling. I mean, she didn't actually say anything to me. She just appeared. I mean, I see things in my mind's eye quite clearly. So it wasn't like she was there in the room suddenly, but I do see things very clearly at times. And that was one of the times in the bath. I think it's probably because you're very relaxed and you're a bit more receptive, I think, in that state, aren't you? And I think with water as well, the whole water thing. So that, yeah, it's very interesting. We had Gary and I, interestingly, where we live, we were in a cafe one day, and it shows you how the universe conspires to make things happen. We were sitting in a cafe, having a nice cup of tea and a cake, and we were talking, and we got talking to this elderly couple next to us in the cafe. Well, anyway, it tops up. They were theosophists, and they invited us along to one of their Freemasonry meetings. So we said, well, okay, it's interesting. So we went along, and it was this old church hall, basically, with old wooden doors and everything on it. And it wasn't a windy day, and we got to the door, and as soon as we reached the door just opened, and there was nobody there. So it's
Welcome.
almost like, yeah, it was like an invitation in, I think, wasn't it? So that was really interesting, but it didn't actually go anywhere. We decided in the end, well, no, we're not really great joiners of things, and so we left it. We didn't sort of go any further than that, really. But it was very interesting, and it was very kind of them to invite us.
Yeah, I
So
wonder if Madame Blavatsky came to see you because she knew you're one of the genuine truth seekers. I meet many people that wear theosophy and other esoteric paths as a badge rather than actually do truth seeking to try and find answers and move yourself along in the path. So maybe she could see that in you. And Gary, he's kind of a psychic mystic as well, isn't he?
yeah. Well, I think I mean, I see it as a great blessing that people want to come through, and they want to I feel that she was there as a guiding influence for sure, and she had a smiling face. She didn't look fierce or anything. She was smiling away. So, I was quite happy about that. But it was a point in my life, I would say, although I was already sort of questioning and searching, but I think at that point things really accelerated, I would say. So I do feel that, there are inspirers, I think I would call them, up there, that are kind of guiding you in the right direction to find things.
And it is difficult to find things sometimes in this world where there's so much false information going off as well
Yeah.
with and many other channels that I sometimes feel have just gone a little bit too doom and gloom, where your shows are always quite positive and uplifting of trying to help people find their way on their path.
Thank you. I think it's really important, though. I think that we've got enough doom and gloom in this world, and I think, to be honest with you, I do think some of it's intentional as well. I think, particularly with the mainstream news channels, it's always fear and doom and gloom. So I think, laughter and happiness, it does raise the vibrations, doesn't it? And I think it's very important. So I think, if you can make somebody smile and you can inspire them, I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to do. And I think laughter in particular is a wonderful vehicle, as is music as well, to get messages across, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, and because you're a singer yourself, you have a wonderful channel with some of your videos on.
Thank you.
I didn't know if you had an actual album out.
Um, no, I did some work with he was a music producer. He sort of does dance music and things some years ago, and we did have a little album out. We called ourselves Solace. And it was mainly Mark's music, and I contributed with some lyrics and things like that. So that was a nice project. But I mean, I think I'm more in the sort of 40s and 50s genre of singing. That's the period that I love, and Marilyn Monroe and Doris Day and all that kind of thing.
Which I think if Madame Blavatsky had lived that long, she would have loved them kinds of characters as well. She would like to see some women that are going forth and being honest to themselves and trying to uplift the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And it's interesting with Marilyn because I think, people that knew her, they said that there was kind of an eminence of her as well. She was quite sort of magnetic as a character, I think.
You did a
So I think that's
fantastic show with Gary earlier this year on Marilyn Monroe. I think it was it the anniversary of her death or her birthday?
I think it was near to it, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, that was our last show actually. We're hoping to get going again with the podcasting. I'm not sure if we're going to leave it to the new year now, so we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean there's so many things to talk about, but I think now, it's a very kind of strange place that we're all in the world at the moment, isn't it? And there's obviously a lot of division, and I think that's being done deliberately as well. So I think it's more important than ever for people to be together, togetherness. And it doesn't matter what religion you have or what politics you have, because you can still work together for the common good, really. And
Yes,
and
remembering. Also, go on. So
sorry, I was just going to say, I mean, it's like, for example, I saw today, unfortunately, one of your videos YouTube has removed, but what about free speech? Whether or not you agree with someone, so what? They're entitled to have their opinion, aren't they? That's how we move forward, by having discussion. If we don't have discussion, then it's merely just propaganda and having sound bites. It's no point, is there? You have to have discussion, and in the world we have light, dark, good, bad, male, female. So there's always got to be this kind of juxtaposition all the time to bring out information, hasn't there?
yeah, it's control, isn't it? Because my
It
video
is.
that got taken down was actually about Rudolf Steiner and his view of the apocalypse. And I'd made that a few years ago, so before all the censorship came in. So I was
Mm.
using words that now you can't use on YouTube, and I was
Oh,
being told off for not going along with their medical control. But it
yeah, medical
was only a few
fascism.
seconds.
Yes. Oh, but yeah, it's very sad, isn't it? Because, at the end of the day, that is how you find truth. That's how you arrive at answers, by discussion, isn't it? And you look back over the years and you must think, well, what about all the surgeons and the doctors and the travelers of the world? I mean, if people had just listened to what they were being told in the Middle Ages about, oh, if you travel too far, your boat will fall off the edge of the world, we never would have got anywhere, would we? So you have to be open-minded and you have to discuss things.
Exactly, yes, I totally agree with you, which is why I used to love your shows. You had some great different guests on, talking all about all kinds of things. I might not always agree with everything they say, but I like to hear what other people have to say. Otherwise, I can't I'm not saying I would argue back with them, but you know, it helps with the debate and such like. And
Yeah,
Madame Blavatsky herself
absolutely.
liked a good old debate.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, you know, you don't have to agree necessarily with, you know, what's coming out, but it's food for thought. And sometimes I find from a personal point of view, sometimes you know, when someone comes out with a maybe something that you think, oh no, you know, I don't agree with that. But sometimes it makes you, it sparks you to go and look, doesn't it? And through that you find other things that you come across and you think, oh, well, you know, that's the reason why. So I think it's really important.
Do you still look into anything? Because where you live, you've got lots of wonderful churches and chapels and such like. Do you still go looking for sacred sites?
Yeah, absolutely. I found out fairly recently, there's a beautiful place that I love to go to, and it's a tiny chapel called St Mary's Chapel in this tiny little countryside area. And in it, I always felt this wonderful sense of peace, and I loved going there. And I found out it was actually a Druid's grove. And there's actually a couple of Druids staying. Now that's kept quite quiet, and that's only just down the road from where we live. And I thought, oh, you know, that kind of gave me a bit of a revelation with that. I thought that's interesting, isn't it? And I discovered on my travels as well that St Mary's, it's very significant, St Mary, because usually they're always near water sources. So, you know, Mary and water sources are very significant. We got there's a wonderful church in a place called Wroxham, which is on the Norfolk Broads. And unfortunately, it suffered the fate of many churches of having the Victorians completely gutting it and redoing it. And it's so sad because I think, how much have we lost through them doing that? But the only real piece that's left of, you know, I think significance is the Norman arched doorway, and around it it's got some wonderful decoration, and they're meliacines or melusines, you know, the mermaid type figures around the doorway, and it was originally painted blue, I believe, and that was fascinating. So, and that's right again by a water source.
So blue still links with Mary. Do you know if it's on the Mary ley line? Would it be on that one?
Well, that I haven't looked into, but it wouldn't surprise me because I think, you know, most of these places are they're usually placed in very significant areas. And yesterday we went and visited St Edmund's Church at the Roman town of Vente Canorum in Caister St Edmund, Norfolk. That actually is not far from a place called Arminghall, and they found a huge timber henge. Again, that's not really that well known. Yeah, but also sadly, in that vicinity is loads of electrical pylons. So whether that was done deliberately or not, questionable. But yeah, so you know that was a very significant place. Obviously, the Romans came to Venta Icenorum. It was an Iceni town, and then the Romans obviously you know overthrew Boudica. And then they took it over as a Roman town, I believe. So this particular church, St Edmund's, allegedly they found evidence of it being extremely old, and the current building has Roman bricks both in the footings, and it's been used to repair the church itself as well. And it's a lovely church.
Oh. And when you were saying about the one that used to be a Druid grove, so the ancient ancestors are calling you, do you feel that maybe you was involved with all that in a past life, maybe, or?
I think so because I do have a drawing to things like that, and nature in particular. I love being in nature. I live in the countryside. I would find it quite hard now to live in a town or city because I love nature so much. So I'm always in the garden or going for walks in the woods and things like that. But that particular place where this chapel is St Mary's, it's so beautiful. In the spring, it's covered in bluebells and daffodils, and it's just this sort of great big dip down. But there's two druid stones. I think one of them may have gone missing now, but there's definitely one still there. You know, and the trouble is, there's always I look back in the archives and found, you know, someone did make a mention of it and wrote, but the drivel that was written about it was not so good.
No, I do agree with you. I worry about all the old ancient science because I, like you, I've read a lot about how the Victorians kind of raped or tore places apart, and you hear about when they opened up old barrows and dug down into stone circles, and then a storm would occur. And and I used to think, oh, what was that all about? Didn't they realise when a storm suddenly brews when they're opening up the barrows that maybe they've unleashed something? I suppose it was just that Victorian mentality back in those days. It was all about finding the follies, wasn't it?
Well, it was, and I think they were sort of crucial times as well because there was a great juxtaposition between Darwinism and the church, wasn't there? You know, so they were sort of difficult times, I think, with those. And yeah, I think that you know, people don't obviously always know what they're doing when they're going, you know, pulling apart these sites. And I think I mean, I obviously don't know this, but I do believe the Romans obviously went round moving stones and changing things quite a lot. And to me, everything basically boils down to nature. That's why I love nature so much. Everything is about nature.
Yeah, Mother
So I love nature.
Same here, yeah, I love because I'm lucky. I live next to a woods, and then on the other side of me, I have a heathland. So I'm often
Oh,
out
lovely.
wandering around and seeing what I can see. And I lived in Wales for 9 years, and I remember
Wow.
seeing my first ever hare, and it's like now I would always know the difference between a hare and a rabbit 'cause it was huge, so
Yes.
wild, but it was just looking at me as I was like, wow. And I'm quite lucky. I get to see some wonderful birds and such like, and the odd badger.
Lovely.
But I think that's part of our esoteric path, isn't it? Is being in touch with nature and being at one with this planet. And too many people are switched off from it in these days. And I know a lot of
Yeah.
people are trapped in cities. I understand that, which is why we don't want the
Yeah.
cities.
And you know, it's really hard, isn't it? Because, you know, I mean, they might be forced into those situations. And that's why I think, you know, when they made the parks and things for people, that they were so important so that people had somewhere to escape to and actually get in touch with nature. We are nature, that is our essence. So to have all that taken away, and it's a bit sad because where I live, and I'm sure this is happening across the country, swathes of farmland are currently being taken up for new building projects. And we've, in the town that I live in, or I mean, we live in the countryside, but just on the edge. So we're lucky that way. We're not too far from a town centre, but it's a countryside town. And there's plans for huge swathes of farmland now to be taken up with building. And I think, whilst I do understand people need places to live, but usually they're not very affordable places to live. And it's a big problem because, you know, if you swallow up all of nature, what are you going to do? How are you going to grow food? They're not really asking these questions.
No, but they're bringing in all their own version of how to make food, aren't they? And all the GM food and such
Synthetic,
like.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
all synthetic, but you know, is you can't avoid or escape the fact that everything is all about nature, including ourselves. And if you take that away, what have we got left?
Well, I'm quite concerned that because, as we've said when we did the show before, I'm quite concerned about how the dark forces are trying to take us away from nature and away from our connection with nature and the divine and the spiritual. So I can see why they're trying to falsify everything or fake everything, like you say, synthetic food and things like that, keep people away from their connections. And then that way they're hoping they can control them and keep away from the divine source, because I believe our mission is to reconnect with the divine and work with this planet. But many people mistake it as, no, we have to control this planet and we've got dominion over
Mm.
everything.
Which is not true. I mean, you know, we're only here for a brief time. And I think, you know, in that brief time, it's the onus is on us to find the light ourselves. You know, we cannot rely on other people to tell us anything. You know, this is the thing with teachers. You know, a teacher is not there to tell you. You know, a good teacher should be there to say, well, you know, have a look here, maybe question here, look at this, so that you find truth yourself. You can't tell people, and I think this is part of actually what's happening at the moment. And as horrible as everything has been and is that's happening in the world, I think for some people it's sort of like a bit of a hammer blow over the head to say, wake up, this is what's happening. And if you told them the truth about what was happening, they wouldn't believe you. So they're kind of having to live through it in order to accept it. And it may be a very difficult pill for some to swallow, I'm afraid.
Yes, absolutely. I've been trying to do workings with people about sending out a vibration of wake up to conscience. I know we need to do a big peace vibration out there because of everything that's going on, but we also need people to listen to their conscience. Most people kind of ignore it, don't they, or don't want to listen to it because they want to be distracted from it, or because they don't want to, like you say, face what's going on.
That's right. It's interesting, when you look at some of the films and things in the past, and I think about Pinocchio, because that was, is it Jiminy Cricket, the little cricket? He was like the conscience, wasn't he? He was
Yeah.
but obviously that's an external conscience, but we have an internal conscience that we have to listen to, and and that voice inside, we have, that's kind of the truth that I want to try and get out to people, is that you have everything. This great source of information that we can tap into. How I saw Helena Blavatsky, I mean, I've seen other people as well, but in the information that I've been given, every single person has access to this. I'm not alone by any means in this. There's so many people, and lots of other people. And we look at people in the past, like Nikola Tesla is probably a classic example of, getting this information. And I think even, I mean, our path has been sort of on the Shakespeare and Sir Francis Bacon arena as well. And I mean, there's some interesting truths in that, very interesting. And I would certainly say that Francis Bacon and some of the others were absolutely aware of, this outside source giving you information. They were absolutely aware of that. They knew that.
I've
You can
been
see.
thinking a lot about that lately, actually, because especially with I think there's a big Shakespeare thing going on at the moment because it's 500 years since his folio was published or something. And I've always been one of those that believed it was actually an esoteric group. Perhaps it included Francis Bacon and a few other people that wrote all these plays.
Yes, I agree with you
Yeah.
absolutely on that one. It wasn't just one man. There was a group of pens for sure, and a group of minds. And that absolutely, for me, that it was a group of people trying to get the Enlightenment out.
Because there's a lot of
Which, of course,
esoteric teachings in them scripts.
exactly. But of course, in those days, it was heretical. So they had to be very, very careful. And it's interesting as well. I think even going to Helena Blavatsky herself and some of the other people involved in the Theosophical movement, and this is only my personal opinion, but I think that she knew far more than she told. But she had to be very careful because it was a moment or a time, a period in which it was difficult for people to accept. They were very much of the sort of biblical understanding, and I think it was difficult for people to open their minds to perhaps there was a bit more than just that. So I think she had to be a bit careful, and tread quite lightly. So I think there's far more to her and her understanding than we know, really.
Well, I find her writings are quite like the Bible, such like you've got the outer layer, but if you read in between the lines, you can get the deeper stuff. But I think she was also quite concerned because she used to warn about the wrong people could misuse the information, because it's like the Force, isn't it? In Star Wars, it's neutral and it's how you use it. It's whether you're a good Jedi or a bad Sith, really.
Yeah, no, it's true, absolutely. And yet again, there's another example of a film where there are truths in it, and I see that a lot. Looking at music videos, for example, as well. I sit looking at some of these videos and I think, oh yeah, that's really interesting. you know, listen to some of the lyrics. I mean, I think Spandau Ballet's Gold is a really interesting one, isn't it? Always believe in your soul, you're indestructible, you have the power. You know, so there's some very, very interesting things. Now, I think when the Kemps were asked about that, they sort of said, oh, you know, it's probably just about, you know, a bit of a love story and things, but it's not really, is it? When you
No.
read between the lines again, you understand really what these things are about. So I think, you know, people should maybe watch some of the music videos out, you know, with new eyes and an open mind, and they might see things that they haven't before.
Yes, and think of it more of a, because there's a lot of love poems get misunderstood, like the Rumi ones. They say, oh, it's all about his relationship with so and so, and it's not. No, I think it's more about his connection with the divine.
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah, some wonderful writings, and you see, I think the Upanishads also they have some wonderful gems of wisdom in those too. Really, really interesting. And so it shows you, you know, all these religions, civilizations, groups, etc. They all had a common theme, and that is the connection to the divine.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, there's a bit more to it than that, but in essence, you know, it is that, isn't it?
Exactly. We're coming to the end of our time, Shona. So please tell
Oh,
everyone. So you say you're not going to be doing your podcast till later this year, but you still have your website and places for people to see your podcast. Can you tell us about your website?
yeah. Okay, we've got Gary's website, which talks a bit about us both on there and our how we met, because we had an amazing love story, how we met. It's incredible. And that was sort of the universe conspiring to bring events and things together. So that it was like a sort of this tapestry with threads kind of interweaving to bring us together. So that's a really fascinating read, and that's the www.thecockneybard.com. So it's Gary Allen, the Cockney Bard. And the other one is basically a shop that we've started. So we sell some of our friends' artwork and Henry Lincoln items that he managed to obtain from France. That's a whole nother story about that journey.
Well, we show
Quite
on that. But you've released Henry Lincoln's latest book, or you sell Henry Lincoln's latest book, don't you, with that he wrote with his wife?
Yeah, there's quite a few different things. I mean, basically, our friend Hamilton has got this huge collection from his estate, which I believe he's hoping to do something with at some point to get it on display. But they're all kind of like the extras of the books and things, you know, copies that were superfluous that, you know, were from Henry Lincoln's estate that are for sale. Also some personal objects and things as well. So there's some little things like paper knives, and he was into the theatre quite a lot. So there's some theatre programs that he'd collected and been involved with. So there's some, you know, quite interesting things. Also Gary's books on there. He's written a few books as well. And also our friend Hamilton's artwork, which is sort of, I would say, spiritual, esoteric style artwork as well.
Oh, thank
And
you.
that the website for that is the alchemistfurnace.com.
And I'll also put links in the little show notes below. But thank you very much, Shona. It's been wonderful talking to
Thank
you.
you so much, Deb, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. And you must come to Norfolk as well, so I can show you some of these churches.
Well, when we finish, I'll stop the recording and I'll tell you my little plans.
Oh,
But
okay,
thank you everybody
brilliant.
for watching. Thank you, Shona, for being part of this. And until
Thank
next
you.
time, everybody, keep the peace vibe going.
Yes, exactly.